Hey everyone, welcome back to Teatster. Today, we've got a classic beige PC that's seen better days, but we're giving it a serious performance overhaul. We're taking modern components, sleek upgrades, and a whole new life for this retro machine. Let's dive in and see how we can transform this old school case into a powerhouse. The footage on screen that you're seeing right now is exactly the moment when I brought this beige PC home from my friend's storage unit. I had been helping him that day organize it, and I saw this laying amongst some of his belongings. He's an older gentleman, but nice guy. I asked him, "You ever plan on selling this? I'm interested." And he told me, "No, just go ahead and take it. It's a thanks for helping me out today." And I gladly obliged because it's been a goal of mine to do a sleeper build since I started building PCs, but I just never came across a case like this, and in such good condition. Now, as we look inside, you can see, the veritable rat's nest of cables, the old school mechanical hard drives, the floppy disk, the optical drive with ribbon cables, the old power supply. Wow. As we pan down, you'll see a gigabyte motherboard, some DDR3 memory, an AM3 socket, and lots of dust and antiquated features. Moving right along, I thought I'd explain myself about this build and my thought process through the entire procedure. So, what I really wanted to do was make it appear like a sleeper. So, what that is basically something on the outside, the outward appearance of the PC wouldn't indicate that it had anything going on the inside that was deemed performant or high-end or high performance, so to speak. It's the same concept as what people do with, non-performance class vehicles. They take them and they soup them up, and then they go out and they beat whoever on the highway. And it's always a surprise. So people like this, and I think it's a cool idea. So what I did was I didn't want to change the outward appearance that much. I did end up having to cut a hole in the top for a radiator and a hole in the bottom for some intake fans underneath the GPU. Other than that, the outward appearance was not altered. I did have to move down the bay that held the optical drive and get a new optical drive that worked with newer motherboards with SATA. And I also wanted to have a working front panel USB hub. So I did add that, and they couldn't find any that were in beige, so they are black. But I don't think it really detracts from the overall appearance, and I think that it worked out fine in the end. The picture that you see on screen right now is the PC right after I got done putting in the components from the very first donor PC that I had received. So this the PC that I had received was from a subscriber, and I'd helped him build his new PC. So he sent me his old one and said that since he knew of this project that I could use his stuff inside of it. So I obliged because it's a really cool thing of him to do, and I didn't want to have to search for parts. And so what we're looking at is a 8600K CPU, a GTX 1060, and we did upgrade the RAM. So that's Kingston Fury DDR4, and we did upgrade the CPU cooler. And that is kind of where it sat for a while until I found some more parts. which kind of brings us into the next picture that I'm going to show you. And in some conversations with the subscriber, he was worried that the PC was just not going to last very much longer due to how old the parts were getting. So I went on Marketplace again and started looking around for another donor PC, and I came across this listing for a RTX 2080 gaming computer for $500 cash. So the specs list said it had a 12400, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3600, Asus Pro Z790 motherboard, Montech RGB mid-tower case, NVIDIA RTX 2080, 512 gigabytes SSD. Sorry. Don't worry about that. And 600 watt bronze power supply and Windows 11 Pro. And all parts were brand new besides the video card. Have most of the boxes to go along. And I was looking at this PC and I started to do a little digging, and I realized that the listing was wrong. He actually had a DDR5 motherboard and DDR5 installed. So anyway, I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I reached out to him and he agreed to meet up, and I came out and looked at the PC and then ended up buying it. And that's where I got the rest of the parts for the finishing of the build. So it actually is a very, very strong performer, and I basically took the motherboard, CPU, and the graphics card and transplanted them into the case, and had a couple dry runs on it just to make sure that everything fit and everything could be wired up the way that I wanted to. Got a plan together on how to cable manage, and decided that I wanted to paint it. So what I did was I took everything back out. I stripped down as much as I could of any kind of finish. I went over it with some alcohol solution, dusted it very well, got everything off, any impurities that I could get off of it, and then I painted it. So the next clip we're going to go into is just me during the process of painting, so you guys can kind of see what the case looked like during that process and the cutouts that I had made. And then after that, we'll go into some GoPro footage of when I got some parts for the build update.
Hey everybody, we are outside, and I have finished cutting all the holes, and now I decided to paint the inside white and not to really mess with the outside too much, so that it looks a lot different on the inside than it is on the outside, which is the whole purpose of doing the sleeper build. So I got a couple more coats to go, but I got some of the stuff that isn't removable masked off, like that fan. If I was to break those tabs, they wouldn't be able to go back in, and I really want to use the original. I don't know if that's an 80mm fan, but I wanted to use the original fan, and these original trays. I did cut one down because the AIO is going to be up here in this top hole. But yeah, we are painting with Rust-Oleum gloss protective enamel. I use this on GPUs, anything that I want to paint white, because it's got a really nice finish, I believe. It hardens really good, protects it really good, and has a little bit of a gloss finish. So I recommend this for PC mods, stuff you do at home, DIY things. So yeah, here it is. just a quick update on the sleeper PC. So you can see a couple things have changed. We ended up getting another donor PC, which had a MSI Z690 motherboard, a 12400, some DDR5 memory, and an RTX 2080 Founders Edition. And so I got it all mounted in there, and now looks pretty good, except the cables are kind of everywhere. They are exposed, and some of them don't even, like that one for that fan, all those different colors like green and yellow. So what's gonna happen is I got some goodies in today. I have a 3.5 panel, front panel USB hub and card reader that's gonna go into this slot right here. So this is gonna update the front and actually you're gonna have usable USB and SD and micro SD card reader up front here. This DVD read and write disk drive is actually functioning. So it plugs in with SATA power and then hooks to the motherboard via SATA. I got some wiring harness tape. So this stuff is going to go around any of the exposed wires that I can't hide. And it's actually going to give it extra durability and protection, as well as turn it black. So it'll all be uniform looking in there. Edge trim. So what the edge trim is for is any of the cuts that I made, like up here. I do have a dust filter on there right now, magnetic dust filter. But any of these edges that I have exposed still, this edge trim is going to go over it. It's actually gonna, this may not work. It may be too thick still. This was like the smallest I could find. We'll see if I end up actually doing that, if it makes any sense, and I'll put the edge trim on there. If not, these magnetic dust covers do a pretty good job at concealing anything that's not perfect looking. So all those wires and stuff that are along the edge of the motherboard and up top that you see exposed, for the most part, I got these channels. They're cable channels for cable management that people use on their desks. But what I'm intending to use them for is I'm going to use that adhesive to run these and stick them on the inside of the case, so that anywhere there's an exposed wire, this stuff will actually conceal that. I'll cut them to size, and then they have these plastic caps. So basically everything is going to be nice and tidy. So they clip on like that, and all the cables are going to be inside these. So from the looking into the case, you're going to see a nice smooth black surface. And I can cut these with a rotary tool or something. I'll probably end up using my Dremel. And yeah, essentially they'll be running vertically, horizontally, and a lot of that cable mess is going to be concealed inside of these things. So that is just a little quick update. So the next time you see me, the next time you see this build,
I'll have it all turned on, everything buttoned up, and it'll look hopefully really cool, but I think it looks cool already. And so yeah, that's just a quick update. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Hey everybody. So this is kind of it. This is about as much as I'm going to do with this sleeper build. Last time I did a little update video, I talked about how I was going to try to manage these cables. What I ended up doing was using this stuff, and these are like cable management trays you can order off of Amazon, and basically these covers slide over these little rails and your cables go inside here, and they can come in and out using these little like bypass holes, and these snap back on. And I actually made my essentially made my own cable management inside this case. Didn't have any. Using this double-sided tape, and I cut them to size. You can see there's a rail that goes this way horizontally in the top, one vertically this way, another one horizontally down here. The reason why I did that is because there is a duct here, and there's a small fan right here. It's an intake fan, and I wanted to hide the wires here, and I also wanted to hide the power button wires because they're running from back here up down here and horizontally this way to the front panel connector, motherboard standoff here. So the rest of it, everything else is like the SATA power, SATA connections for the optical drive. It comes down and goes inside and then plugs in right here. All the fan cables run up this up tier to the hub, and then all of these cables that were loose and like kind of they were a little bit everywhere. I got them all tidied up, and then everywhere else, since I wasn't really wanting to spend a lot of extra money on like a new power supply, everything that I could reuse from the donor PC I wanted to keep. So the power supply, it's semi-modular. It doesn't have really nice sleeved cables, so what I ended up doing was covering them up with these. You can get them at Walmart. They're just basically cable management like tubes. You can put cables inside them, and you can kind of conceal all of them and keep them together. So I did that on anything that wasn't already sleeved, and it kind of matches up with the 24-pin motherboard power that comes standard on this Corsair power supply. And then everything that was exposed, I actually just wrapped it with this automotive fabric tape. So this cable here, before it was like green, and you can still kind of see it right there. It's green and yellow. I actually covered all of that. The PCIe cables I covered. The CPU power cable I covered. And the exposed wires on the 24-pin motherboard power I covered. And then I basically just stuffed as much cabling that I could for the rest of the cables up behind the AIO. I left enough space to do that. And now, essentially, the cables you do see are pretty well in the places where I want them to be. They're not all over the place. It looks more tidy than it probably would have to begin with. And I like it.
The white paint turned out really fine. This trim, I put on any of the exposed metal edges that I had to cut, so nobody can cut their fingers. Of course, we've got the 240mm AIO. It is now on a MSI Z690A Wi-Fi motherboard. 12400, so that's an Intel i5 12400. This is a DDR5 motherboard. So what I picked up was some Kingston Fury Beast DDR5. So this is 6000, and it is for Intel and AMD both. And it's more RGB. So I'm going to install this. So the new DDR5 memory is installed. The cutting I had to do, so on these bottom intake fans, I did cut out some cutouts for them, so they get plenty of airflow from the bottom. And I've got these feet on here. They're kind of temporary, but I didn't really find a good solution locally at the hardware store. So they're actually just furniture feet, but they have these nice felt tip surface connectors on them, and they do the job. They actually lift this up enough so enough air gets into the case. Of course, this intake here works as well. So then you've got just as much intake as you have exhaust. So this is a exhaust fan here, and the two 120mm fans on the AIO are exhausting as well. Other than that, got the Wi-Fi antenna. Let's set this up here. I can show you the front. The optical drive does work. You could watch DVDs, listen to CDs. You can burn CDs and DVDs. And then this is a brand new front USB panel. So it's got two USB 3.0. It's got USB-C, 20 gigabits per second, 5 gigabits per second, micro SD, and SD card reader. And this works. So it's great, usable front panel. So we modernized that without being too intrusive and changing the way that the case looks and functions. And then on top, the AIO cutout for the radiator, so the air pushes air out, and we got a dust cover up here to cover that. So besides those few things, the case looks like it did over 20 years ago. So close to 24 years ago, I think this was built. The inside of the side panel still has this really cool motherboard layout diagram. So that's all original. And it still has the original like OEM sticker. You can see that. Very cool. And now, the very last thing we're going to do is install our NVIDIA RTX 2080 Founders Edition. It's still a really great card. Performs very well. I think it's similar to what a 3070 can do. It's only got 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but today in modern titles, if you want to play them, you can upscale. You can use apps like lossless scaling to get more performance out of it. FSR, I think 3.0 works. In NVIDIA's Infinite Wisdom, they did not allow these cards to use FrameGen. Kind of scummy, if you ask me, but there's ways to mod through that. Another thing I did was, there's also you'll see, but this GeForce RTX logo here typically only will light up green, but you can actually get it to do RGB and sync up with everything else in your system by basically installing a different VBIOS onto the card. So you can install like the EVGA RTX 2080 VBIOS, and what that can do is it allows for the very usable RGB function to work, and you can actually lift the power limits up. So you can actually push this power limits higher than what you normally could on the stock NVIDIA VBIOS. So let's get this installed, and that will almost be it. It's got this NVLink too. I don't think they use that anymore for SLI. So you could connect 2 of these up together in sequence with NVLink. I don't know that apps really scale well with it or use it that well, but it's another cool little thing about this older stuff. But it's a solid performer, and it handles thermals very well with the side panel on as well. So we're going to do some testing on camera with thermals. I know a lot of you will say, there's not a lot of airflow. Oh, I'm an expert, I built these. No, actually the airflow is great. It can handle this stuff without an issue. So I didn't get any throttling in testing, and we'll take a closer look at that after I get it put back together. And yeah, I'm sure somebody out there is going to be very happy to be receiving this. I hope it gets to the right person. And that's almost it. So let's get the front panel back on. Let's clear the workspace off a little bit. Okay, so there it is. Wi-Fi fin on top if you want. And on these cases, you have to put the side panel on first because it shoots forward to clear these little panel holders. The front snaps on. dust cover for the floppy disk, which unfortunately doesn't work, but keeping it on there. And there you have it. A very cool, retro, modernized sleeper PC. So I'm gonna boot it up, and I'll probably take the side panel back off so we can see what it looks like with the RGB turned on. And that'll pretty much finish it off. And I'll do some thermal testing, and that'll be it. I think we're gonna get this into somebody's home and get them using it so they can game on it and have a good time and enjoy it for what it is. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a few.